It really doesn't surprise me that Brawl in the Family has quite a low rating on IMDb. That being said, there are a lot of episodes that I don't like that have quite a reasonable rating, but this one, definitely not. And to be honest, I think it's still rated too highly. I just think this episode's all over the place, and I feel like it's trying too hard to do too many things and doesn't give each thing enough time to develop properly. This is the 7th episode of the 13th season of The Simpsons, directed by Jim Reardon and Matthew Nastuk, and there are kind of two main parts to the narrative. The first involves a rather chaotic family fight, which in itself is quite interesting, seeing kind of the different characters having what I think is a pretty typical, maybe slightly more aggressive, but otherwise a fairly standard family fight, and it ends up with the Simpsons in a situation where they have to prove they can work together. And I feel like that could have actually just been the whole narrative. And they could have done a lot more with that and expanded on it and, given them more obstacles and more bridges to cross. And I think that would have been a lot more interesting and would have carried a lot more weight and a lot more meaningfulness. But there's a second part to the narrative, which I don't really like for two reasons. It involves the return of the women Homer and Ned married in Vegas. And I never thought, until watching this episode, I never thought we'd see those characters again. And the reason for that is because they were kind of boring. The whole event itself in Vegas was interesting. The episode was, unpredictable. I suppose you could say that this episode was unpredictable purely based on the fact that I hadn't expected them to return. And I don't like them and I find them boring, and their involvement in this episode I just didn't care for. I didn't think it was interesting. I found them just as dull this time. Yeah, I mean, there's one-off characters in that previous episode, that's fine. But if they were to become recurring characters, which I don't know, I still obviously have quite a few episodes of The Simpsons to watch because they're incredibly prolific. But I just didn't like this episode. It could have been so much more, and that's not to say that every episode has to be meaningful and carry weight and, leave me with a happy feeling or feeling thoughtful, but I feel like it was a mess. It was a bit all over the place. Nothing had enough time to develop properly, and I just feel like it's a bit of a weak link. Generally, I've been more positive about the last few seasons than the average rating. That's certainly not the case with Brawl in the Family.